Hey all, welcome to a brand new video. I am Paris the Programmer, and today we are going to be talking about getting started creating an app. Okay, so a little bit of background. I've been in the market looking for some type of application that can help me track my bills and expenses, right? It's a pretty common thing that people would need. And I've looked through the app stores. I've looked through Android. I've looked through, the Apple App Store, and both on Mac and on iPhone. And nothing. There's a ton of them out there. Everybody kind of does something a little bit differently. There's some things I like about some of the apps. There's some things I don't like about a lot of the apps. It's kind of a free for all. Really, to me, there hasn't been anything that just had all the features that I wanted. So being that I'm a full-time developer in my day job, I decided that I would try to create my own. I've actually created an app before. I created it in React Native and was able to create it for an Android tablet, and it was actually a delivery tracking app that I had some decent success with. It's not a perfect app. It was my first time, so there was a lot of learning curve involved, learning a new language and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to take you on this journey with me, kind of in the process of kind of what the beginning looks like. What does it look like? I'm going to try to do my best to discuss how I'm feeling, what am I thinking, some of the problems that I'm coming across, so that if you go to start your app, or if you've been thinking about doing it, or you've never thought about it before and this inspires you, you might have some insight as to what it takes to start an app. And I thought, why not record it along the way, make some videos, do some tutorials and stuff like that. So it's kind of a kill two birds, one stone kind of thing. To get started actually is kind of the hardest part, right? So I obviously I'm recording and doing some other stuff, so that was obviously is delaying me a little bit. But part of it is I had to try to decide what kind of language am I going to use, right? What is my goal? And my goal really is to have a mobile / if I can, desktop. I'm a big fan of desktop apps. I think I might be in the minority of people because I feel like a lot of people maybe are just mobile only, or maybe they just like using web versions of applications. I am a stickler I like a good desktop app. So I'm going to need something that can adapt in multiple ways. So that way, as my needs change, it can hopefully change with me. And that code, whatever I've written it in, will be able to support whatever it is I'm trying to do. So that being said, and that having already given you a little bit of my history, I do have experience with React Native. So I did actually start looking into React Native, which would be a great choice if I was going to do Android / iOS, which I do want this app to be, cross-platform. So I actually wanted to write it desktop first and then have a mobile component to it. So React Native actually doesn't do that by itself. React Native itself is for Android and iOS specifically. I was actually able to do some research, and I found that Microsoft or a team at Microsoft has actually forked the React Native library from Facebook itself, and have actually, they have a GitHub page where they basically have a Mac version that you can basically create a Mac OS X native app using React Native. I actually, spoiler alert, have actually already tried this, and I'm actually going to demo the getting started part. So because I want to take you guys through, like I said, this is going to be kind of not necessarily a tutorial, but I'm going to walk you through as I'm creating this app, kind of like I said, my thought process, where I'm coming from. This will be my second app technically that I've worked on, that I've created personally. So to get started, I'm going to click on this app here. Okay, cool. So there is a latest stable version, but we're actually just going to go ahead and start with the nightly build, which is version 69. And So there are some getting started dependencies. This isn't necessarily going to be a how do I set up for React Native directly, but you are able to follow these. I am doing this on a Mac. If you're doing this on Windows, you'll need to follow the Windows specific tutorial. And so I do already have Xcode. I do already have CocoaPods. I've already followed this Xcode part where you need to install the tools separately. I do have Node.js running via Homebrew, and I do have Watchman. So basically all the code and all of the example commands are on this website here in this how-to. I'll link this exact page in the documentation or in the comments below. But spoiler alert, I actually won't be continuing with React Native, and I'm going to show you guys why. So having followed all of these steps, if we go ahead and get started. So I just have I'm using iTerm. You can use any terminal emulator that you want. Microsoft has the terminal app now available in the Microsoft Store. Highly recommend that if you're on Windows. I know there's a built-in terminal in Visual Code, if Visual Studio Code, if that's what you're doing. So anyway, but you just need to pick a directory. So in this case, I'm in my documents folder, and I'm in a folder called PTP for Paris the Programmer. And this is completely blank. There's nothing in here. Looks like we're going to be using version 64 as well, not 69, so that's fine. Okay, so basically it's just saying if you want to get set up, you just follow these links. Okay, so we are going to be starting off here, copying this command here. Now it does warn you that you need to be in the project directory where you will need to be in the place where you want your project directory to live. So in this case, we've already gone over that. I'm in Documents PTP. You can create this wherever you want. So we're just going to go ahead and not paste this. Why did it not paste? There we go. So we're going to go ahead and paste this, and we need to get rid of the project name. So we're just going to arrow over here, and we're just going to call this $bills for now, and we're going to hit enter. And from having done this once before, just kind of testing it through all the way, this did fail. There it goes. Yes, so it's going to resolve. Let's see if it actually works this time, but it was failing. Yeah, okay. So the fun part is we get this CLI.init is not a function. And if you try to Google for this, essentially clicking on this first link here, it does throw an error. This person says when they're trying to do it with .69, and then they said steps to reproduce, just try to start the project. Somebody says this is an error specifically with 69. You can actually start with 68.2 and then upgrade to 69 later. So we can try that. Problem is it did create a folder already. It just failed to initialize. So we're actually going to go ahead and remove the folder by doing rm-rf $bills. You'll obviously substitute $bills with whatever your folder name is, whatever your project is called. We're actually going to up arrow back to the 64, and we're going to try 68.2. And again, spoiler alert, it's going to fail. So it's not with 68.2 or 69 because the documentation actually says to use 64. So we get the same CLI init is not a function. And then basically said, people say thank you. Even if you downgrade, I think it's related to the new macOS upgrade. So this very well could be a Mac permissions issue. Had the same issue on Windows using 68.2 solved the problem. The people are saying you might need to use yarns or npm to solve the issue. So we might try to uninstall React Native and React Native CLI globally. Okay, so it says this worked. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. So we're going to go ahead and go into $bills, and we're going to do an npm install just to get. So we've got React, could not resolve. From the root of the project. So if we continue, just to see if, so then we need to cd into $bills, which we just did. We're going to copy this init function, or this init command rather, and let's see if this works. No. And this is the same error that I was getting in kind of pre-production, kind of testing this out. So this brings up a really good first point about getting started with programming, or really specifically with app development, right? Because I am a programmer in full time, like I said. I mainly deal in PHP, CSS, HTML. I'm what's called a full stack developer. So essentially, full stack meaning every part of the process, from the server itself all the way up to the front end that the user sees, the buttons and the text inputs and all that stuff. Full stack. So being a full stack developer and having been for several years, I don't want to say you don't have these problems. I mean, you definitely have these problems in programming, right? You're going to need to be able to look up documentation. You're going to be able to need to roll with the punches, read errors like this, and be able to try to figure out what it means. You're going to have to obviously use Stack Overflow. That's a huge tool that is available to all of us. And I don't know if I've met a developer alive who hasn't been on Stack Overflow, or who hasn't just randomly copied sections of code from Stack Overflow to throw it into an application or whatever to solve your problem. And so it's stuff like this that you're really just going to have to try not to let it wear you down. Obviously, it can be frustrating. There are going to be times where it seems like all you're doing is just one after the other, copying failed error prompts and commands and info and typing them into Google to figure out what the problem is. There will be some days when you're coding and everything is just going to go smooth and you're going to get a lot done. So it's going to be a back and forth kind of flow to it. So it just, don't let it get you down. And it's just something you have to kind of roll with, being a developer of any kind, whether it's, app development or otherwise. So in this case, I'm just going to save us some time and say that I, for sure, am not going to go with this project, just because the amount of time it's going to take me to try to figure all of this out and why it's not working is just not worth it to me. I mean, I do know React Native. I'm not super strong in it. Like I said, I built an app already on it. But basically, I am going to be choosing a different framework to run, just because this really isn't... I've spent more time debugging why this isn't working than actually getting started with my project. So in this case, I've actually decided to go with Ionic. And it is a framework. It's an open source mobile toolkit, if I'm reading right from their website. Essentially that they actually support 3 different code bases. They actually support Angular, React, and Vue at the moment. So if you end up choosing to use Angular or React, a lot of this is going to be similar in terms of setup until we actually get into the code. And then obviously the code is going to be drastically different from what I'm going to be doing versus what you may be doing on your side. So to get started, we're actually going to go to the documentation. It's going to ask you to sign up for an account. If you do that, it can actually, and you link it with GitHub or Bitbucket or some of these other ones, you can actually have it log into those services and create the project for you. In my case, I'm actually not going to be doing that because I'm going to be doing this all from the terminal. So basically, we're just going to go ahead and get started with the documentation and getting started with the terminal. Now, there is some stuff in the environment set up here. I definitely recommend anytime you're going to be doing stuff like this, if you're going to be following documentation from, if it's Ionic, if it's one of the other platforms or one of the other frameworks, definitely follow the environment setup. I can't tell you how many times I've just skipped through it thinking, oh, I've got everything I need. I already do React development. Why do I need to follow the environment setup again? I already have it. Well, there could be something very important in that environment setup that you might miss if you just assume that you're good. Now, in this case, for Ionic, it is just as simple as having Node and NPM, which I know I already have, so that is fine. So in this case, they're just talking about the built-in terminal and what's supported, what isn't. So basically, they recommend that you use the long-term service version of Node and NPM, or Node rather, and that's fine. I'm not using that, but it's really just as far as compatibility. So I guess if I end up coming across something that doesn't work, that'll be my fault. So yeah, they've got GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. They've got a Git GUI. We're going to do the CLI installation. So the Ionic CLI is the preferred way. So you're just going to want to go ahead and install the Ionic CLI if you have not already. So first and foremost, let's get back here and let's get our working environment clean again. So we are going to be doing that. So we're going to copy and paste npm install -global /ionic/CLI. So we're going to let that run. This will install the npm package for the CLI in a global directory, which on Mac, I'm not entirely sure where that is. It's some temp directory somewhere, I'm sure. So we're going to let that finish and install. Okay, we are back. So that took a few minutes, but once that's installed, we're going to go ahead and move on. It says if there was a previous version of the Ionic CLI, we are just getting started with it, so we'll be fine. It does tell you that the -G is global. So we are going to be starting an app. To create it, you can use one of the start commands. In this case, let us look up how to... Okay, so that said Ionic start my app /space tabs. So I want to use the side menu. So I'm going to say, inferring from the documentation, I'm going to say Ionic start $bills, and then it's going to be the word side menu, which I am going to guess is one word. Yes, so right here are the examples. Side menu is one word with no space. So we're going to say side menu. Now what this should do, okay. So we're getting a questionnaire. So we're going to be using view. So I'm just using my up and down arrows to then choose view. And what this is going to do, this is going to do a lot of nice things. This is going to be essentially a bootstrapper that will download a lot of the npm packages and things we need to get started. It's actually going to create a lot of the view templates and tie them all together. It's going to create a lot of the routing functions and files that we need to get started. And it does all that for you. The worst part is you just kind of have to wait on it for the program, for the command to finish. So I will see you guys back here in just a minute or two when this is done. Okay, and we're back. So that did take quite a few minutes, but as you can see, it did create a lot of the directories and the structure and the routing that I was talking about, things that we would have had to have created manually, but it went ahead and got those ready for us just with one command. So in the bottom half here, you can see that it does talk about how to kind of get started. You can cd into your new directory, and it gives you some Ionic commands to get started. So that's where I'm going to leave this video for now. This was just more of a getting started, some of the background as to what kind of app I'm going to be working on, what kind of adventure we're going to be going on, because as you can tell, this is a relatively long video, and a lot of the beginning half was basically trying to figure out what we were going to do, which framework we were going to go with, which language we were going to go with. And sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, sometimes, if I was dead set on using React Native, I'd had to go back and figure out what was wrong. In this case, I decided to pivot and instead use Vue instead with Ionic. So it is nice if you're able to pivot or to be able to use a few different types of languages. That way, it's kind of like tools in the tool chest, right? I mean, you need to be able to use whatever tool is going to work for whatever it is you're trying to do. You can't always bend your tools into doing what you want them to. Sometimes you need to just use a different tool. So with that being said, we're going to continue this project in the next video, where we will then start with where this kind of left off. We'll CD into that new directory. We'll start with Ionic, and we'll kind of get started, figuring out where we want to go from here. So thank you all for watching, and hopefully you stick around. If you like what you saw, go ahead and subscribe. I plan on, making the rest of these videos. I'm going to intersperse some other videos here and there. I've already got some ideas that I'm working on. So love to have you along for the ride. So we will see you guys in the next one.